And welcome back to Survivor 42 and 42. Just finished Survivor Game Changers. Sarah wins. Yay. And we're going to talk about everything that is involved with that win, everything that goes into the Survivor Game Changers season. And we're going to, at some point, compare it to All Stars, which are looked at as the two worst all returnee seasons. But we are joined today once again by Carly, coming back first time since One World, and Alex for the first time, who is a fan of Game Changers. So, Alex, what is your Survivor hot take, and why is it that you like Game Changers?
Well, my hot take is that I like Game Changers because it seems like nobody liked this season at all. I am the one of the people in this unpopular opinion about it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to talk about this season, and maybe I'll get some more people on my side.
I and I will say, and I will start it off with saying, I feel like there is a Game Changers is one of those seasons that I have watched more than I probably should, and there are moments that I really enjoy about it. Having said that, the first thing they really dropped the ball on is if you're gonna name the season Game Changers, you better cast more than half of the cast being game changers, whatever that means. I think they really dropped the ball with the title of the season because everyone's expecting, a lot of Cerise and Sandras and JTs, and you get Culpeppers and Sierra and Culpepper, who both do really well this season, but no one was really considering a game changer. So, Carly, who were some of the people that you were hoping would be on this cast, and what did you think of this cast overall?
So first off, I have the same hot take about the season. I really enjoy it, actually. I think it's a lot of fun to watch. And looking back, I don't know who I was hoping for when I found out the season was Game Changers. I feel like a lot of the big ones that you thought would be there, Malcolm, Sandra, Suri, Ozzy, like the people you assumed were going to be there were there. But you still have to have a full cast. So it's a TV show. They're going to throw in other people and make up reasons that they're game changers. Yeah. So I can't think of anyone in particular that I wanted there that wasn't. Sometimes I do think with the format like that to throw in a couple of winners with a bunch of people who haven't won and have even been like pre-merge, like pre-jury is a little weird and a little bit of a disadvantage for the winners. So I don't necessarily love that, but
and they have 3 on this season, right?
Yeah, Tony, Sandra, and JT.
And apparently Natalie Anderson was also supposed to be on there, but she got a concussion.
Oh, I would have liked that.
Yeah, I would have loved Natalie Anderson over Haley. That's not a Haley slander. I like Haley. Haley's fine.
I'm going to be honest, when the season started, I had no idea who Haley was. I was like, I've never seen this woman in my life.
she's the person from Worlds Apart. Alex, who do you think who are some of the people that stood out as they're here?
Oh man, I was really surprised that they brought Ty back because I didn't think of him as someone that would be considered a game changer, but like we kind of discussed before, they do have to fill in some players. I also was kind of on the same boat as you guys with Haley. I wasn't really sure if I had remembered which season she played on because she didn't really stand out too much to me.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool that they brought Brad Culpepper back, but I thought it would have been his wife instead.
Yeah.
She was more of a game changer than he was.
And
so
Brad.
That was really surprising to me. Let's see who else. Which it's funny. I was very excited to see Sarah again because I am a huge Sarah fan, but I didn't expect her to come back for that type of season. I would have thought it would have been like a second chances season that she would have came back in, just because she didn't really get to show her skills in the first season. She kind of stumbled a little bit, which but I really liked her as a person. They did her personality really well in the first time she played, so I really liked her. But I was surprised that she was a part of it.
Yeah, and I know that I already touched on it, but like, and I think that if they had titled this anything differently, people wouldn't look on this season as like, why are all these people here if the season's titled Game Changers? Because you do have, and we're just talking about from their first time around, we do have Haley and Sierra from Worlds Apart, and besides this being not the best season, there really aren't that many people in that season that you would call Game Changers. You bring back people like Beast Mode Cowboy, who I understand why they brought him back because Survivor almost killed him. So it's like, hey, come back and we promise to kill you this time. But once again, it's like you the title. It's the optics of the season. We'll go with that. It's the optics of if we're being advertised. These are 20 of the best, the greatest game changers. We're expecting to see some great players from their first time around. And what we got was, like I said, half great players and half randomized on Brant Steele, and we end up with the Haleys and Sierras of the world, which both of them make the merge, so they must have done something right. Um, I will say that the pre-merge is very fun this season. For the most part, we're gonna get to why I kind of hate it towards the end. But the pre-merge is very fun because we are learning the dynamics of a few of these tribes, and I feel like this is Sandra like fan fiction this season, where it's like, what would happen if Sandra just like takes full control of her tribe and does things, and what we get is Sandra is in full control from the very beginning until she gets swapped for the second time and eventually goes. So, what did y'all think of Sandra this season? Carly, we'll start with you. Where do you rank this as far as Sandra performances? And what did you think of Sandra just basically in the season period?
As far as Sandra performances, Sandra is consistent. Like, she's a consistent player. She gets consistent placements. She gets to the end or she goes out. What is it like?
On day 16. Day 16.
And both of those are for good reason. It's because she is phenomenal at what she does. The way she just talks to people and comes up with little seeds of doubt. She's great at planting seeds. That's what she does best. And it's a lot of fun to watch. And I loved watching her have full control, especially because at this point, everybody knows Sandra. They know what she does, how she does it. And then they just sit there and let her do it. Like the coffee thing with who's it, JT and Michaela? Like that, Sandra's hands all over it. Anyone should have been able to see that. Tampering with food is like Sandra's go-to. She does it every time.
Yes.
Nobody understood it was her. She's good at noticing little things about people not liking each other and figuring out how to like exacerbate that situation in her advantage.
Alex?
I was actually going to bring up the coffee and the sugar situation because, man, nobody had any idea. Nobody, other than she ended up telling
everyone that was left after JT. Oh no, she told Barner. Yeah, she told Barner.
Yeah, she told Barner. He didn't say anything. Like, what? And the argument that broke out at Tribal, and it was a huge thing. And man, and I believe that was the Tribal that the cup of water got pulled out and it was poured. That was an iconic episode.
Yes. One of my favorite.
She's just sipping her water like, you don't know anything, buddy. You're going home.
Well, and I feel like this is watching it how I've been watching it over the last 34 days. It's fun to watch people's storylines play out in a short period of time. So like I watched the coach storyline and I watched the Rob Mariano storyline and all that. Watching the JT storyline this time around in such a short period of time, obviously I feel like this was his worst performance because I do give him some credit for trying to make a move in Heroes vs. Villains with the letter and the idol and all that. But with this one, he just totally shits the bed as far as he doesn't even bring the idol to tribal council. In a tribal 5, when you know that your name is probably getting written down at least twice, and he doesn't even bring it with him. And I think that's where, when people look back on JT, they say, "Oh yeah, how did he even win the first time?" It's like, well, they look at this one and they say, "How did he win the first time?" But if you watch Tocantins, I do feel like you can understand how he won that one. But by the time he gets to this, it's just like he's playing. He's almost a shell of his former self. It's like they nerfed him. For people that play video games, they nerfed him to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, like this guy, how does this guy exist, and how did this guy win a game? And Sandra, to Sandra's credit, you know, manipulating the situation where she knows she's not going home, and she knows that she can convince one other person to swing Michaela's way. They send JT home, and this is all an elaborate ploy to get out JT, who, let's talk about the previous tribal where Malcolm gets sent home in the first ever dual tribal council where two tribes go together. And we'll start with Carly with this. What did you think of that? What did you think of that tribal, first of all? But secondly, do you think that there was a potential that things could have even gotten more chaotic if JT hadn't gotten up and whispered? Because that's what started the whole mess. But do you think that it could have potentially still ended up that crazy if JT hadn't gotten up?
No, because I don't think the idol would have been played correctly had he not gotten up. So he ruined everything the second he stood up. Like, ruined everything for himself the second he stood up there. Like, obviously you can't predict what is going to happen for sure next tribal with like the swapping and things, but like the second he stood up, he destroyed his own game. Like, I don't know
Him and Malcolm's were just done as soon as he stood up.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking and why you would tell the opposite tribe how to correctly play an idol in front of your current tribe. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Alex?
Especially that early on.
I also agree. I don't think if he would have stood up that anything crazy would have happened, because everybody would have voted where they were going to vote, and then if they played the idol, I don't think they would have played it correctly at all. I don't. They would have had they had a shot in the dark on who it could have been. It could have been anyone, and so for them to know, I doubt they would have. And him getting up, they knew after tribal that he told something.
Yeah, he fucked him. He and the wild thing is if Malcolm stays and the idol gets played wrong and all that, JT still goes back to camp afterwards and is still looked at as a snake. Like, there's no way he gets out of the situation without looking like a jabron, for lack of a better phrase. So JT does that. One of my favorite moments actually is not the idol play. It's Ty referring to Sierra, "Oh, pretty lady," and he puts the necklace on her all the way. And she's like, "No, I'm gonna take this off and give it to Jeff." I just love Ty. So Malcolm goes home, and the tribal. We don't have to talk about it, but the tribal before that, we get Tony out of there very early, which is what they should have done in Winners at War. They didn't, and we saw that turned out. So as the pre-merge progresses, we get two swaps. And as anyone that has listened from 30 to 34 right now, I've started talking about the 30s problem. The 30s problem basically being survivors saw how people were guessing the correct winners online and decided, hey, we should start editing the season this way. And I feel like this is one of the seasons where they not only edited the season a certain way, but they also started trying to mix things up so much that the game became overly convoluted from an audience point of view and from a game point of view. But as an audience, you don't know anything at this point. You don't know who's working with who because things have been mixed up so much that, we're going to get to it later. Michaela goes home and you're sitting there like, well, why? Like, when did Michaela's name come out of anywhere? Or why does Andrea and Zeke like hate each other for those couple of rounds that they're playing together at the merge? And I feel like that's one of the problems with Game Changers is because of the swap, because of the two swaps, and because of the production staff trying to hide the winner, we just totally lose focus of anything that's going on. There's no main storyline with the season. There's no, like, when you think back on Game Changers, it's like, yeah, Sarah wins, but like, and the other thing happens, but you really don't have a cohesive storyline to get you to the end. It's just a bunch of small things that get us there. So, what did y'all think of the two swap system this season? And do you think that the season could be looked at as better if they only stuck with the one swap? Either one can go first.
I can go.
Okay.
I think this is very interesting because when you swap people more often, they can actually make the gameplay more complicated. I do agree that, you know, maybe it came off to the audience a little bit more confusing because it is hard to like display everything that's going on in a season. They've got to get confessionals, they've got to be following people around, and I think that maybe went on their back burner. I wasn't aware that they were trying to get it so people couldn't guess the winner of the season. I didn't know.
This is a conspiracy theory. That's not real. I just feel like that's how it's happening.
But it's funny because I've experienced playing orgs like this where we swapped every 2 rounds. And if you make it to merge, you don't even know who to trust. So any little thing could just flip the switch and you'd be like, we're voting them out. So when Michaela gets voted out, there was a huge ruckus about her, you know, Sari tried to play Sarah's advantage, and then Sarah felt slighted. And then I don't know, my theory is the best thing that she could do to convince other people to get with her is just to vote Michaela out because Sari and Michaela were working together. That was one thing that we did know. Sari and Michaela were working together. That part is definitely clear. But yeah. I think it adds more drama. I just wish there was more display of it because I know a lot of people complain about how they didn't feel like much was going on, though a lot of things happened in this season. I just think people don't remember it because they didn't feel the story. I felt the story, but you know,
you two felt the story.
I mean, I have so many things written down of things that happened in this season that are iconic, and it's insane. So there's like history in this exact season. So I think maybe they could have done a better job of displaying that on TV. But you know, we can't change the past, so unfortunately.
Yeah.
Carly?
I think New Survivor in general has a tendency to like try and add too many twists, too many complications to like keep it new and fresh. And sometimes the basics are going to produce better results, in my opinion. So like they had this game changer theme with all returnees. So I get they were trying to give returnees like screen time for the fans, but then that makes the storylines less cohesive because you have all these people you're trying to follow. And then you have an extra swap, which for anyone who was a fan of Sandra, like that kind of ruins that whole thing. And I really
she breaks the merge if there's not that second swap.
I would have loved to see that, obviously, just because she was in such control up until that point. So that sucked. But even just how many advantages they were and how they all like accumulated in the most horrific tribal council later on.
We'll get to it, yeah.
It was just too much a little bit. Although I love this season, I do think that there were things that were overkill. And I think New Survivor, the last 10 or whatever seasons, just as a whole have a tendency to do that. They try and do maybe too much instead of just sticking to the basis.
Yeah. I'm going to touch on that in a second. The reunion, they're showing, I wanted to avoid this, but like it just annoys me again. They're showing the Barner thing, and they're showing his tweet or whatever that he put out after what he did on the episode, and now he's like shilling his book and all this, and it's like, wow, they're giving a lot of time to this fucking schmuck during the reunion, but we'll leave that here. It's just in my peripherals, and I have to point it out. With the 30s, and this is the other 30s problem, and that it's gonna get overkill in this season. People want big moves now. And as a fan of non-big moves, I feel like Survivor saw, okay, people want to see this, like people want to see strategy, and so I feel like they try to escalate that strategy by adding more advantages to the seasons. And so, like, leading up to this, we've got maybe one advantage per season. And in this one, we've got 3 idols. We've got a merge idol, I'm pretty sure. We've got a steal a vote, and we've got a legacy advantage. Then, as we move on, we get all the Ben idols. We get we get steal a votes and extra votes and idle nullifiers and all of this. And this is one of those seasons where it's like, yes, let's just put it all out there. And this is what people want to see, right? They want to see all these advantages. When in reality, yes, we do care about the strategic portion of the game, but we like to get to know these people as well. We don't want to just see them as these chess pieces that they say that they don't say that that they say they're not using with these people, but we don't want to see them as chess pieces. We want to see them as actual individuals, and I think that's one thing that 41 and 42 has done well is we are starting to learn about these people again. We're not just looking at them as like, oh, that's the person that is pulling off all these big moves, but I couldn't tell you where they're from or what they do or anything like that. I have no emotional attachment to them. And so with this season, I feel like they really started to push towards what we eventually get with like 35, 36, 37, Edge of Extinction. And I think that's another thing that really hinders the season. And also, there's like 3 episodes that are like double boots, and I feel like it's rushed. The season is just it almost like watching it today. I didn't feel like I was putting a lot of time into it, which is crazy because I was very busy today and I was able to get through it and never felt like I was, trying to rush through. It just kind of finished. And not with a wet fart. We'll get to the winner. But as we hit the merge, we just want to point out 2 things. One, Sandra gets voted out for the first time. It doesn't have to talk a lot about her because we've already talked a lot about her. Thoughts on Sandra? Do you guys respect her / do you guys enjoy her?
Yeah.
Yes.
I respect her as a game player. I mean, I don't think anybody can compete with Sandra in what she can do in a game.
Okay.
I mean, every time she walks into a game, she works her magic, and I don't understand it. I'm like, what? And everybody just, it's like putting in her hands every time.
Quickly, the VAR thing happens. It happens. It happens. Everyone knows what happens. You can go and watch it on YouTube if you want to know what we're talking about. It happens. He doesn't technically get voted out. It's just more of a please get this schmuck off the show. He goes. He cries. It's an emotional moment. But I do want to touch on the fact that Andrea and Ty have been through the ringer on their times on this show because Ty had to watch Caleb almost die, and then he had to watch Zeke get outed. Andrea had to play on Redemption Island. She had to deal with the Brandon Hance thing in Caramoan, and she had to watch Zeke get outed. And so watching them cry during this tribal council, every single time I've watched this season, I like almost get teary eyed watching them because, and through my eyes, it's almost like these two have been through so much shit on the show. Why do they keep coming back? But that's all I'm going to say about that moment. We hit the merge, and oh no! Before we hit the merge, question for y'all. When that second swap happens and Debbie has to go to exile, and Cochran shows up, the only thing I could think about this time around was what if Ozzy had been the one that had gotten exiled and had to go to exile with Cochran, who he, I won't say bullied, but he wasn't the biggest fan of in South Pacific, and now he has to get advice on how to win the game from someone that he treated like shit during their first season. What did you guys think of the Exile ship twist this season?
Debbie was the person to go because it didn't matter what advice she was given, it was never going to work. So like it didn't really ruin any integrity of the game because she was never going to listen. It was never going to work. It was never going to happen. And because she already knows everything and is the expert of everything, so why would she need advice?
Yeah, she needed help from Cochran. Alex?
She went there and she acted like a queen. Like, she was like, I'm gonna tell no one. Nobody knows I'm doing this. And then I just remember Cochran being like, man, is she like I just remember their conversation, and in a whole, Cochran was kind of like, is she even gonna listen to what I'm saying? And then, out of all things, she picks the vote. But I don't remember her ever using it.
She does. She does. And you know what's wild? I watched Game Changers all day, and I couldn't tell you exactly where it happened.
The Ozzy vote.
The Ozzy vote? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which she thought she led, and then she got voted out, I believe, the next episode.
But it was also 7-4 to 1 to 1. So it was not game changing.
And that's why I don't remember her playing it, because it didn't really matter.
It's not the Sarah Steele vote.
She could have done so much better to use an idol on a moment she thought she might go home. I don't know, but maybe she thought, oh, I'm never gonna go home. I'm running this because, she's a wild lady. She is a wild lady, let me tell you.
She did think she was running it literally as she was walking out of Tribal.
And they sent her ass home next. So we hit the merge. We have this Haley versus Michaela thing as far as who's going to go home. And as a POC, I really enjoyed the conversation that Sari had with Michaela, where it's like, we're looked at differently. You have to keep your attitude in check, this, that, and the other. And that is the Michaela problem with this season, where I feel like, based off of what we saw in Millennials vs. Gen X, I feel like that's more of what the real Michaela is. And I feel like in this season, they just tried to make her mostly negative. And the only thing to compare it to is Debbie, where I honestly feel like the real Debbie was in wrong. And in this season, she's portrayed as a fucking cartoon character where she just can't. Everything that Debbie does this season, it's like, okay, this feels like Debbie playing the role of Debbie in a cartoon for kids. And it's embarrassing, but with Michaela, it's almost insulting because we know how Michaela is. We've seen how she plays in Millennials vs. Gen X, and I feel like at Final Tribal this season, we get the real Michaela again. But everything in between there, it's like, oh, she's being portrayed as stubborn and a brat and all that, and it's like I didn't get that vibe from her. Millennials vs. Gen X. So that kind of bothered me, but it doesn't matter because Haley's the one that goes home. Haley, whose most iconic moment in 2 seasons is "I didn't consent" during the Malcolm Tribal, which I quote in my everyday life for some reason. And then the merge kind of just happens. There's never really, and I'm going to get you guys' opinion on this, there's never really a moment between merge and maybe the Sari vote where it's like, I don't really, at that point, I didn't care about what was going on. And that is, as a non-fan of this season, maybe that's just me, but from Haley going home until the Sari vote, it was like, all right, let's just get through this. Oh, this person left. Oh, cool. So were there any moments between those 2 vote outs that y'all were like deeply invested in? Carly, we'll start with you. Cool.
Sorry, I was looking at the boot order again to remember. Yes and no. I think part of that is what we kind of touched on earlier, is that like we didn't really understand their relationships going into merge because they had swapped so many times and they couldn't show everything. The only thing we were like really certain of was Sierra and Brad Culpepper. Everyone else was kind of up in the air. And then they tell us that Andrea and Zeke are really close, and then all of a sudden they're against each
They
other.
just hate each other. Yeah.
So I think that was maybe like the most interesting storyline through the middle, is like figuring out what Zeke and Andrea were going to do. Because I think both of them are really excellent players. Zeke's problem is he wants to pull the trigger way too soon. Andrea's problem is she is incapable of minimizing her threat level. Like, she's an excellent survivor
Yes, she
player.
is.
Like, all around, she's great at everything.
She always gets voted out around the same time every time.
Yeah, she doesn't know how to minimize that. She can win competition, she can strategize, she is likable, and she just doesn't know how to tone it down. And so they show her as kind of being at that, up until she leaves, as kind of being the biggest player in the game at that point. And then she's gone, and it's like, okay, well, now what's happening? That's kind of how I feel like it goes through the middle of Merge.
Alex?
So for me, because I was such a big Sarah fan, I focused so much on what Sarah was doing throughout the merge and everything. So I was like, what is she going to do? Because they didn't really highlight her much pre-merge. So we didn't really know what Sarah was doing. I remember at the beginning of the game, she said, I'm going to play like a criminal. I'm not going to play like a cop.
I'm not going to play like a cop.
And so I am like, what is she going to do to play like a criminal? When are they going to showcase this? And I think the weirdest part, it's because we didn't know those relationships, because it wasn't really shown, and we were all a little confused about who was working with each other. There was a part where Sarah said that her closest ally is Zeke, and she didn't want him to get voted out. What happens that night is he gets voted out and she votes him out. And that for me was like that merge that you're talking about, that you didn't really know what's going on. I was like, what just happened? Like, why did she vote him out? Especially because other people seemed to be working with him. That was the only part. I was like, what just happened? And then I was like, is she being a criminal? And she was portraying that she, like, even on her interviews portraying that, like, was she that into it? I was like totally blown away, and I was like, all right, well, what else is she gonna do? She's voting out her closest allies. Like, what is going on?
Well, and I watching it this time, I started to compare it to the final season of Game of Thrones, where, historically people have looked at this final season of Game of Thrones as like, what is this? Why are these people doing these things? What's going on? That's how I felt watching Game Changers this time around, because now I have a reference point where it's like, okay, I get what's happening. I get it. I'm seeing it happen, so I get it. But I don't understand why anyone is doing anything, and all I know is the outcome. I don't know how we got to the outcome. I don't know what drove Andrea and Zeke to go against each other to the point where they're like, Andrea has this very heated vote out confessional for Zeke. But we're getting all this. It's like, where is this coming from? I feel like I missed something. And so this time, I will say, this time I tried to watch it through other people's eyes. This is my third or fourth time watching Game Changers. And, the first time I watched it live. The second time I watched it through Sarah's eyes. And so today I was trying to watch it through everyone else's. And even then, it's like, I don't understand people's motivations for a lot of things. Even Cerise, who, we usually understand her motivations. I don't understand her motivations this time around. In my notes, I have Ozzy sucks, but it's right after the phrase fuck resumes. So I'm assuming this is when Ozzy gets voted out and he says good luck eating, which, how very season 13 of you to think that, wow, like, we need Ozzy around to feed us. Like, he's really stuck in this old school mentality. For me, I've never been the biggest Ozzy fan. This season, it was like, oh yeah, and Ozzy's here. I feel like his storyline kind of ends with South Pacific. So what did y'all think of Ozzy this season? Or what, was he a non-factor? Do you think that there's some way he wins this one? You can be quick.
I think Ozzy tried the most this season to strategize, but he's still just in that old school mentality. Of all of his 87 times playing, I think he did maybe strategically his best effort this time, but it still just was, he just can't do it.
Alex?
I think his reputation got him. I think his reputation of immunity wins at merge is scary. And so I think people took the opportunity when they could, even if they were, even if they wanted to work with him because they knew that he could make it to the end. I just think his reputation got him. He has a reputation for just blowing challenges out of the water. And
he didn't even do good in the challenges he got to play, really.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, is it a big move to take out Ozzy this season? Based off how he was playing, do you all think this was a big move to get rid of Ozzy this season?
No, but I do have a note because the game was turning into two sides. So it was a big move for Sierra and Brad Culpepper to take out Ozzy, because Ozzy was going to go with Cirie and Andrea and create some sort of opposition for them. And once Ozzy was gone and that whole side was kind of broken up, then that Andrea and Zeke started going after each other. So it was a great move for Sierra and Brad Culpepper specifically because they took control of the majority at that point.
Yeah. Alex, before we move on.
I don't think it was necessarily like a big move of the game, but I think it was a smart move at the time. Because I think in reality, people, in general, we're at season 34. People know the general idea of when merges. People know that it's going to be coming soon. People know when merges. They're like, oh, we know that the history of people, everybody's already played, so everybody can know how people played in the past. I think it was smart because on the off chance that Ozzy does pick it up, because even though he wasn't playing well, that didn't mean he wasn't going to turn around and play really well later.
Yeah.
So
the fuck resumes thing I'm not going to ask you guys about, but fuck resumes basically is a callback to yesterday where Will Wall says, oh, I've got to make my resume or people aren't going to like me at the end. I'm not a big fan of resumes. I think that all it takes is for you to have a good final tribal to win the game. But Jeff and Zeke and a couple other people start bringing up resumes a lot more this season. And I blame Will Wall. I will always blame Will Wall because I hate Will Wall as a on the show. I'm sure he's a nice guy in real life. We get to the final six, which is the next time that I care about this season. And Cirie gets advantaged out, or in the orc community, she gets Cirie'd out, and it sucks. Whenever I play games, one of my first icebreakers that I ask people is, "What's your Survivor hot take?" And I always go with, there are no such thing as robbed players in the history of Survivor, except for Cirie and Game Changers, because she had no votes cast against her, and she still went home by default. Whether people want to add other people to that category, whatever. But what did you guys think of that moment? And do you think there was a way that we could have avoided that situation?
I hated it. I think everybody hated it. I definitely cry every time I watch it like a baby. She handles it better than I did. But I think that how we were talking about too many advantages this season was an issue. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I do blame the big moves and too many advantages on Sierra and Kelly Wentworth.
And Cambodia, yeah. I mentioned that in the Cambodia episode. I was like, it's all Sierra Easton's fault that big moves is a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely them. And then Kelly's idol plays that just got Jeff going, man. So
we need more idols
here. Yeah, this is how we ended up here. But But like we talked about earlier, there wasn't a lot of like personal relationships that we got to see. So this season particularly, like one of the fun things to watch was that like Suri and Michaela relationship that brought a lot of humanity to this season and really made, not that Suri needs help being rootable, but it made her so much more rootable, and it made us emotionally attached to her specifically, which I think made it even more difficult to watch her go out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucked.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, watching this over, I was like, man, like this is Survivor history right here. Why, like, how does a group of people become so paranoid that everybody plays? And then you look at before the episode, like before they get to tribal, I remember Brad Culpepper going to Ty and being like, "You need to get me your idol," and all of that stuff. And I realized that, well, because he thought, like Aubrey was going home, and then he had some uncertainty because he didn't give Brad the idol that maybe he would be going home. So he plays those. And Sarah, we're at Final Six and she has the legacy advantage. Of course, she's going to play it. And then, Suri doesn't have immunity, and she's the only one left. And there is nothing else that can be done. And it really sucks because I feel like she would have made it a lot further if that hadn't happened. If all those idols weren't
with
played.
one less advantage in the game, I think the other person probably would have been voted out over Suri. I think almost anybody else there.
Except for Troyzan. I feel like Troyzan at that point probably stays over her.
Maybe. I think depending on.
Well, Brad would keep him. Oh, okay, yeah, I guess no, because Brad would be the only one that would definitely keep him. Yeah. Aubrey wouldn't keep him. Ty wouldn't keep him. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. Troyzan would go home. Everyone would go home. And it's so fucked because this is the first, like, in real time, it's been a few years since we've seen Suri on TV to the point where people wanted to see Suri again. And real time for me, this time around, it'd been, 14 days since I've seen Suri, and I was still pining to see Suri again. And I think that this is, much like how I said that this was Sandra fan fiction, I feel like this was Suri fan fiction as far as, like, she is somehow playing under the radar for a fourth time and is not getting votes at Final Six when she should absolutely be getting votes, because this person should have gone home early. She should have gone home, like, if people wanted to flip the vote on Michaela, they should have flipped the vote on her. Suri should have gone home the previous round, and now she's about to escape another vote at Final Six. She's absolutely winning the game, and every single time you just sit there and it's like, how did we get to this point in the history of the show where a person can't even get voted out or idled out or whatever it is? They just go. And I appreciate the pomp and circumstance of that tribal as she leaves. I appreciate the applause and the thanks, Jeff, and thank you, Suri. When he says thank you, Suri, I actually like choke up. It's amazing. Please, yeah, go.
I love that Jeff let her say the words. That was an amazing moment, and he was like, "You have the honors." Like,
yeah. But Suri goes home. Then Aubrey. As a person that used to be like a big time Aubrey person, I prefer Michelle now. I'll say that. Historically, I look at Michelle higher than I look at Aubrey, but I still like them both. Ty goes home, which I think is the smartest move at Final Four, is getting rid of Ty, because I do feel like Ty might give Sarah a better chance at winning than give himself a better chance of being Sarah than everybody else does. And we get to the final three. And my notes for the final three are actually the most notes that I have on the season. The first thing I have written down is poor Troyzan. Because I liked Troyzan his first time around, and this time rewatching the seasons, I enjoyed him in One World because I liked his underdog story and the fact that he was one of 3 people that had watched the show before. But Troyzan has no point. I guess so. He has no chance going into the final three. And his concession speech, and I told y'all both this before we went live, I really resonated with that because he just thanks them for giving him the opportunity to play again and for being a fan and being able to be a part of the experience. And I really like Troyzan's that moment, and that's the wrap on Troyzan. That's all we were going to talk about with Troyzan with Final Tribal. Carly, we'll start with you. Why are people so pissed off at Sarah?
I don't know. I think that they were being so extra about that. Like, I think she says like it best when she talks about her using the tools that she has. She points out that like Brad was a professional athlete. She was not going to beat him in a lot of these immunities, or maybe even any of these immunities. So she had to use what she had, and that was her ability to build relationships with people. Like, you would not be mad at Malcolm for winning challenges to get to the end. So why would you be mad at somebody whose skill set is building relationships for doing what they are capable of doing to get there? I don't think she did anything that was like super horrible as far as getting to know people. She wasn't like, oh, like, let me promise you my hand in marriage. Like, she wasn't like crazy. She didn't manipulate these people to a degree that was like
From what we're shown,
morally wrong, in my opinion. Like, she was playing a game. She made friendships, and those friendships got her further. And they were all trying to do the same thing. Like,
pot kettle. Oh my god! Like, especially with this, it's like you all were doing the same thing. She just out friendshipped you to the point where you actually bought into everything she was saying, whether it was true or not. You bought into what she was saying. That is your fault. That is not her. I mean, I guess it is kind of her fault too, but it's your fault for buying into it. Alex, I touch a lot upon this I call it a myth, the myth of the bitter jury. And what the myth of the bitter jury is I believe that the myth of the bitter jury is that a jury will vote against someone in a majority to screw them out of a win. I think that's false. I do think that people can be pissed off and still vote for someone to win the game. And I think that this is a prime example of that. Of these people are laughing at Sarah when she says, I built genuine friendships with you, and everyone's sitting there antagonizing her by laughing at her as if, wow, I can't believe she actually believes that. So what do you like why do you think these people felt so slighted by this person when in reality she was just like Carlos, she was just playing the game socially and socially turned up to 11 in most events.
I would like to point out first, this is one of the few examples in Survivor seasons where a huge physical threat or someone who is very popular in like interviews and stuff, this was one of those very few times that someone who wasn't that person all the time that was doing this, and that in the front end actually won the game. So this is like the era where we're starting to see those people that are in the background that are under the radar and doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes win the game. And I think that they were so mad because they didn't see it coming. They had no idea that she was playing like this because they knew this Sarah the cop. They didn't know Sarah the criminal, as she called herself.
Officer Sarah.
She played completely different, and it worked for her. I mean, they completely berated her. I have it literally on here. They were laughing at her. They were like, they called it, saying they were like disgusted by what
Andrew says she's
happened.
disgusted at the fact that at how she felt after being voted out because of how she felt like Sarah manipulated her. And it's just like I get that you feel a certain type of way. I get it. I do. But just from what we are shown, it doesn't seem like Sarah is having fun doing this. It's just more of a she does well at getting to know people, but she also is really good at voting people out. And I feel like people in their heads, and this, I want to compare this to All Stars real quick. Where in All Stars, this is the first time everyone has come back for the first time. They're all friends outside of the show. A lot of people came back and thought they were going to be playing Survivor with their friends, and it wasn't going to be a big deal. And then you have Rob Mariano, who thinks, yeah, these people are my friends, but I'm going to go in there and play the game like it is a game. And that final tribal, these people are overly pissed off because of their friendships they built outside the game. Compared to this, where these people are upset of the bonds they built inside the game, and they feel slighted by her, but they still give her the win because they do feel like, yeah, she played the game. She played the game well. We're pissed off at her, but we still think that socially, it does seem like this was a jury where they're voting based off of the social aspect. They give her the win, but it's just uncomfortable. This is one of the more uncomfortable final tribals to watch because these people are so angry at this person, um, to the point where in Winners at War, and I've talked to Carly about this a few times. Winners at War, there's a secret scene where Sarah and Kim are by the well, and Sarah has this emotional breakdown where she talks about how the people from her season thought she was a horrible person, how she has PTSD from the season because everyone, they thought that she deserved it, but that she was just a bitch, basically. And she doesn't like feeling like that. And I feel like we see that a lot at this final tribal where, like, everyone keeps saying they're laughing at her. They're like, she don't give us that social game bullshit because you didn't play it. When she did play the social game. She played the social game better than a lot of other folks have. Um, what did y'all think of the new final tribal rules, which we still get to this day? How they changed it?
The outwit, outplay, outlast thing.
Yeah, it's not really one juror at a time. It's just like a panel.
I think I like it, but then I don't like it at the same time. Like, I like it because it gives more opportunity for like open dialogue, but I still feel like I also like when each person gets a chance to like speak and ask questions that they want to ask, because in the end, that's what, each jury member gets a vote. And sometimes when you're like talking in a group like that, people can be like herded into voting a certain way because it is like it kind of gives the perception of a group decision sometimes. And I'm glad that it hasn't been perceived that way, but that's where I'm like, they gotta be, it's gotta be like something carefully done out like that people aren't swayed by other juries' comments or
Yeah,
stuff like that. So, because I feel like it could turn into something very negative.
Carly.
I think it feels a little bit more natural than the old way. Like, it feels more like a conversation. And so, like, as a viewer, it feels more natural and you can kind of follow people's thought processes better. Or, like, it gives more room for people to change their mind too as it goes on, because they can be like an active part of the discussion after they get to say their piece. So I like it. It's fine. I don't have like strong feelings either way, though.
I'll say that I do prefer this version. I do miss. I don't miss it in like a good way, but I do miss people trying to go up there and like wag their dick one more time for the screen time of I'm going to give this epic speech and then sit down. Usually piss ass drunk as they're giving the speech. The one thing I will say about this version is there always is inevitably someone that'll like I'm your champion this season, so like go out there and fight the good fight. And we get it with Zeke with Sarah, and we get it with Ozzy with Brad. God, Ozzy, God. God. And Debbie, I guess, which, cartoon character, like I said. Michaela, I love her at this final tribal because she is one of the ones that doesn't come off bitter at all. She's just like, you know what? Michaela and Zeke. Sarah played us all. That was some badass stuff, as in Michaela's words. That was some badass stuff. You got us. Y'all are some bitter betties. All that jazz. I really like Michaela in that moment. And I will say, fun fact: every org that I've ever played in, when I've won the jury, I asked that question that she asked Brad Culpepper. What did you learn about me? What did you learn about these people? And if they can't answer it, I don't vote for them. Sarah wins, and I think that I don't do the whole deserving, non-deserving thing, but I do think she deserved to win. One of my favorite winners. I know that in 2022 eyes, we're supposed to hate her now because cop, but I really don't put any stock in that. It's just like people try to discredit Kagyan because cop won that one. I try not to pay attention to that kind of stuff outside of the game because all we're seeing is what we're seeing on the show, and I really enjoy Sarah's win. This as a person that would play a social game. I really like the way that Sarah was able to navigate, and I know that Sarah is, that both of y'all have attested to loving Sarah as a winner. I am in that crew of I really like Sarah. I'm glad that she was able to come on this season and play again. And I actually really enjoyed her in Winners at War as well. So overall, Carly, why do you enjoy this season?
I enjoyed this season because I think pre-merge is a lot of fun to watch because there's a lot of like surprising elements to tribals. Like you never really knew how it was going to end up. And then post-merge, once you start putting the pieces together that Sarah is making the decision at every single vote and she knows it, but nobody else does, it's a really, really fun storyline to watch pay off at the end, to watch her know that she is controlling the game and nobody else ever call it out or mention it. And then she wins. So you feel like it was worth your while at the end. Like the right person won, given what we know about what happened.
Yeah. Alex?
I think it was a great season to watch because we saw like a bunch of historic things happen. We had the unfortunate Sari situation. We had huge players go out early, smartly. People were actually being smart. And I saw my favorite player win a game. We're going to give props to Brad Culpepper because he won 5 immunities and joined the elite crew of people that not very many people are a part of. So that was another historic event. And, I think, maybe they could have done a better job of showing stuff to make more viewers like it. But I really enjoyed it because I think, as Carly said, that the right person who was making these moves won the game. It was one of those satisfying moments where you're like, the person who's actually running the game actually wins the game and we see that in the last season of Survivor. The
42?
person, yeah.
Yeah, I will say that, despite what my actual rating is going to be in a second, I do like Sarah as a winner. I do appreciate the fact that she was running the game under the radar, but not under the radar to the point where people didn't recognize her. It was under the radar to where it's like people are acknowledging that this is happening and they're just letting it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate Sarah's win, but overall, I'm going to give it a 3.25. No, I'll give it 3.5. I'll give it 3.5 out of 5, and I think it's better than All Stars. I don't think it's the worst all returnee season, but I do think that it runs into the editing problem that the 30s run into. I do feel like the advantages kind of hamper it down. I do feel like that one tribal hampers it down. But I enjoy the winner in the bubble of Survivor 34, and I'm glad that I've met two people that can attest to it. I'll say it like that. But both of y'all have said that you've enjoyed this and that you enjoy the winner. So I was really excited that both of you wanted to do this. But up next, we've got HHH, and it's another season that people like to shit on. It's another winner that people like to shit on, both in season and after the season's over. So I'm really excited to probably start it now. But we have HHH. Carly, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. I know that you guys are in two totally different time zones than me, but I appreciate you guys coming on. And everyone else, we will see you after Survivor Heroes, Healers, Hustlers.